One of the most interesting things about our world is the recent spate of discoveries being made time and again. Considering the fact that our planet has been around for millions of years, the opportunity to know more about it is always intriguing. Recently, there have been a lot of theories about races of humans that existed long before we arrived on the scene. Specifically, historians and even theologists have posited the existence of massively huge giants that roamed the Earth thousands of years ago. While the jury seems out on that one, a recent discovery has made these claims even stronger, and it could change our perception of the Earth for good. We'll be telling you all about it, so kick back and let's go to school. Giant corpse found in Iraqi tomb. Years ago, reports surfaced detailing an incredible discovery in Iraq that shocked everyone. According to the reports, German explorers and archaeologists led by Jörg Fassbinder discovered an ancient tomb back in 2003 which they believe had belonged to giants that roamed the Earth centuries or even millennia ago. As you'd expect, the researchers weren't fine with just discovering something small, they had to go big. The tomb was eventually searched, with explorers reportedly discovering the bodies of massive giants and sending them to laboratories for testing and maybe some good old carbon dating. However, since this discovery happened, it appeared that nothing much was said about it, and everyone just pretty much put it under wraps. As expected, the discovery has been the subject of some controversy. Whose grave was it, and are there more like it? While the answers are still sparse, let's try to break things down to see if we can piece it all together. King Gilgamesh. One of the most prominent theories about this archaeological find is that the tomb belonged to the mythical king Gilgamesh. You might know Gilgamesh from the Marvel movie The Eternals, but while the movie character was excellently portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, the mythical character actually has really long roots. Gilgamesh is the protagonist of the Epic of Gilgamesh, a story which many believe to be the oldest story ever written in human history. In the story, Gilgamesh was described as a giant who was 17 feet tall. Even the great Kali didn't have nothing on this guy. He was reportedly the son of a Sumerian king and a Mesopotamian goddess, and he ended up ruling over the land of Uruk, which later became Iraq. So it is possible that he was buried in his hometown, and his body was eventually discovered in 2003. Anyway, Gilgamesh was essentially a demigod, and in his reign he waged wars against his enemies and sometimes acted as a bit of a tyrant to his people. Not surprising considering he had godlike strength and could pretty much do whatever he wanted. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, it is said that the gods finally listened to the cries of Gilgamesh's people. These guys had pretty much had to live in fear of their all-powerful king, and they wanted a savior. So Anu, the king of the gods, used clay and his own spit to make Enkidu, a wild man who would basically challenge Gilgamesh to a contest of strength. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu eventually came to blows, it was pretty epic. Both men had godlike strength, and their duel reportedly lasted days. Eventually, though, Gilgamesh still managed to eke out the win. This guy was like the Uruk Terminator or something. And despite the win, Gilgamesh was reportedly so impressed by Enkidu that they eventually became friends later on. Hey, game recognizes game, doesn't it? In fact, when Enkidu was eventually struck by death, Gilgamesh was so grief-stricken that he basically became a philosopher. The death of his buddy caused him to question the meaning of life and the value of all human accomplishments when we're all going to end up dead someday. Enkidu's death also caused Gilgamesh to pretty much become a better person. He cast away all his pride and set out on an epic quest to find the meaning of life and hopefully even defeat death. This guy was so badass that his side quest was to defeat death. I mean, sure, it's just death, right? How difficult could it be? So, was it Gilgamesh's grave? We're not exactly sure how Gilgamesh eventually died, but the point here is this: for many years, everyone has pretty much believed that the Epic of Gilgamesh was no more than a literary concept and that the ancient king probably didn't even live. Nevertheless, everything changed when Fassbinder and his team made this discovery. According to the team, it seemed like the grave they discovered had indeed belonged to the ancient Uruk king. Fassbinder added that the discovery had actually been made possible by modern technology. Interestingly, the team of explorers didn't just see the burial site. According to Fassbinder, the team uncovered over 100,000 hectares of land and property, many of which were described in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He also claimed that they found Babylonian houses and properties scattered around the area, all buried underground for thousands of years. So then, where are the bodies today? Interestingly enough, this is where the story kind of falls silent. Fassbinder and his team claimed that they had indeed found Gilgamesh and conclusive proof that the entire epic was actually real. But what happened to all of it? The Iraq War cover-up. Well, one major theory is that excavations of the site were stopped on account of the Iraq War. According to some sources, the war in Iraq began about a month after Fassbinder and his team went to the country and discovered the tomb in the first place, so they didn't necessarily have enough time to excavate it and take the things they found. And when the conflict in Iraq boiled over, most of the artifacts eventually got destroyed. Conspiracy theorists who believe this also claim that the entire reason why the United States government even started the Iraq War in the first place was so that they could swoop in and pretty much clear the entire archaeological site. Which leads us to the super soldier theory. Another theory is that those items were actually excavated, but the US government and global elite pretty much hid them from us. Some believe that the government is currently carrying out DNA tests on the corpse with the hopes of reincarnating the breed of giants that once walked the earth, or, at the very least, see if they can be crossbred with humans. Corey Good, a YouTuber and investigator, is one of the biggest proponents of this theory. In an episode of Cosmic Disclosure that has since been taken down, Good claimed that there are stasis chambers with these giant creatures in them all around the world. Whether the government is using them as possible testing sites for some sort of super soldier project or just preserving them as part of human history, we really don't know. The Nimrod connection. As I said earlier, the discovery of these giants in their tombs has raised a lot of eyeballs, and there are as many theories about what could be going on as there are giants themselves. However, while many people tend to think that this might have been the final resting place of Gilgamesh, not everyone is sold on the theory. Detractors of the original theory claim that since it has never really been proven that Gilgamesh actually existed, there was no way the tomb belonged to him. Instead, these people, many of whom are theologians, believe it was actually Nimrod, a character in the Bible who was also relatively infamous for his strength and ambition. So for those who might not know, Nimrod was actually a character in the Bible. Not much was said about him in scripture, although he was said to come from the line of Cush, the grandson of Noah, who built the ark that saved mankind after God decided to destroy the earth with water. Nimrod was said to have been a mighty man and a hunter, and according to the Bible, he was also a king at some point. In the book of Genesis, it was written that Nimrod's kingdom stretched to cover Babel, Erech, Uruk, Calneh, and the land of Shinar in Mesopotamia. This implies that he either founded those cities or ruled over them in some capacity. And did you notice something there? Uruk. Yeah, I thought so too. Anyways, other biblical accounts also link Nimrod to the construction of the Tower of Babel, the huge lengthy tower that was said to have stretched so far after humanity wanted to reach the heavens and speak to God and his angels. We all kind of know how that story went. God crushed the tower and caused all citizens of Babel to speak different languages, essentially dividing them once and for all. You should note that the Bible actually never stated that Nimrod was the one who commissioned the building of the Tower of Babel. The insinuations have primarily come from scholars and other experts who believe that the king was indeed the one who tried to defy God and be equal to him. Flavius Josephus, a 1st century Roman scholar, wrote of Nimrod, "Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man and of great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe it to God as if it were through his means they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured that happiness." Okay, so enough of the history lesson. The point of this is that many scholars have made speculations about the identities of these people and their connection with the tomb that was found in 2003. First, some actually believe that Nimrod was Gilgamesh. Both men were incredibly arrogant and seemed to have some beef with God in their time. And what's more, their deaths were both unclear. No one exactly knows how Gilgamesh died, nor do we know how Nimrod managed to meet his end. Considering the similarities between them as well as their incredibly strong physiques, there is an argument to be made that Nimrod and Gilgamesh were the same people. Or perhaps the person who wrote the Epic of Gilgamesh pretty much used Nimrod as a form of inspiration. So could it be Nimrod's grave? So the question remains, could it actually be that the grave found in 2003 could belong to Nimrod? Well, it isn't likely, but there's definitely some credence to the fact. People who believe this argue that Nimrod was actually real, unlike Gilgamesh, who so far hasn't actually been proven to be real. According to these people, the depiction of Uruk in the Epic of Gilgamesh was based on the actual place, which indeed did exist. So, since Nimrod was said to have been the ruler of the land, it is possible that the grave discovered by the German researchers actually belonged to him. Honestly, the question I have is this: why didn't the designers of the gravesite just put up a sign at the entrance to let anyone know who it was? I mean, if Fassbinder and his team had got into the grave and it simply said, "Here lies King Nimrod," or "Look inside to see Gilgamesh, the baddest man to walk the earth," we wouldn't need to engage in these arguments. Other mind-blowing, gigantic discoveries. Now, you might think that the discovery of Gilgamesh or Nimrod or whoever the hell is in that box would be one of a kind, but this is where you'd actually be wrong. Over the years, we have had many discoveries that essentially confirm the existence of giants who really did live among us. Many of these giant races pretty much lived hundreds or thousands of years ago, so they may even predate some cultures that are currently thriving today. The Lovelock Cave discovery. One of the most prominent discoveries of giants in recent memory was the Lovelock Cave discovery. According to historians, in 1911, two miners named David Pugh and James Hart had been contracted to search Lovelock Cave in Nevada for some bat guano. The product was an important ingredient in the manufacturing of fertilizer, so it was highly probable that the men had been hired by a fertilizer company or a farmer. Anyways, what seemed like a routine search turned into one of the most consequential archaeological discoveries. As Pugh and Hart went deeper into the mine, they discovered well over 40 human skeletons, which they guessed had been kept there as part of a burial ritual of some sort. When the skeletons were brought out, they were found to be incredibly large, and by large I mean really large. Archaeologists explain that the skeletons in the cave were found with red-colored hair. This means that they were most likely not even Native Americans that could have lived there before. Most of the bones that were discovered have actually been lost to time, but there were some that got preserved and which are still around. Initially, though, the discoveries were pretty much limited. Pugh and Hart only saw the skeletons and presented them to the local authorities at the time, but when word of this massive discovery eventually got out, attention quickly got drawn to the site. In the spring of 1912, L.L. Loud, an employee of the Museum of Anthropology at the University of California, was eventually sent to the region to make additional findings. He excavated Lovelock Cave and discovered it contained quite a lot of loot. Loud found over 100,000 items in the cave, and while he also didn't maintain an official log of the items, he saw several of them were truly phenomenal. The Cetakar origins. Over the years, many have questioned which race these giants could have been from. Some believe that they might have been the Cetakar, a legendary tribe from Paiute history who were said to have red hair and be gigantic. These guys were also said to be cannibals, so I sure hope the government's not planning on bringing those back. An account from a famous Paiute writer named Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins explained that her people had been victimized by the Cetakar for a long time. These cannibals essentially fed on them for years, and they in turn decided to rise up and fight back. A war ensued between the Paiute people and the Cetakar, and it lasted for about 3 years. And just like that, the Cetakar were extinguished, with the last of them being buried in the same cave that they had run to for refuge. Further evidence of these giant skeletons being from the Cetakar tribe is the fact that archaeologists and researchers actually found evidence of burning at the entrance of Lovelock Cave. For many people, this is undoubtedly a compelling story. The Lovelock Cave discovery shows that there was truly a race of humans that lived and maybe even occupied the American landscape before the Native Americans themselves, or at the very least, at the same time as the Native Americans. The Stonehenge builders. If you head to England, one of the places you might want to visit is Stonehenge. The site is primarily used for ceremonial purposes, but it's also one of the most popular tourist attractions in the United Kingdom. But have you ever thought about who built Stonehenge? Because no one really knows. We know the site was built in different stages, but we've never necessarily known who built the site. Well, years back, we got some clarity about them. In 2018, researchers at Harvard University revealed in a report that the people who built Stonehenge pretty much disappeared shortly after they built it. But even worse, those ancient Brits left pretty much no DNA remnants in the modern British population, so their line and race pretty much vanished from the face of the earth. The study definitely ruffled feathers. I mean, how do you explain the sudden and almost total disappearance of an entire race? No one exactly knows who the people who built Stonehenge are, but considering that each of the stones that makes up the prehistoric landmark weighs at least 25 tons and is about 13 feet high, we're pretty sure these guys must have been really large. Again, what if they were giants? The fact that the Stonehenge builders suddenly disappeared has been a huge mystery that has boggled scientists for a long while. I mean, what the hell happened there, and why is it that these people suddenly disappeared without a trace? To solve this problem, we can find a bit of a clue in 1998. That year, researchers at Emory University in Atlanta analyzed DNA data that had been collected from different DNA populations. The goal of this research was to trace the ancestry of Native Americans across history, and researchers ended up categorizing all of the DNA samples that they got into 4. Each line represented a different migration path off the Asian continent between 20,000 and 30,000 years ago. But the researchers also found that a small portion of the collected samples fell out of the groups they had categorized. The researchers believed that this portion could be traced back as far as 36,000 years, and it had a different source from the other groups. Because of its distinct features, scientists dubbed this strain the X lineage. And the meaning of this is simple. There is a group of people on this planet whose ancestry can't be completely traced. Our alien forefathers. So I've got to say this, it's almost impossible for you to find any possible set of theories about human origins without coming across aliens. Wherever you look, these guys just seem to always be there. Anyways, our trip to Alien Town in this video goes via Leipzig, Germany. In 2011, biologists led by the famous geneticist Svante Pääbo of the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology revealed that the earliest humans actually made contact and even went as far as mating with some of the most primitive hominids. The researchers took several DNA samples from around the world, grouping them by region and even the time when the samples were active. As they explained, they had found conclusive proof that humans didn't just mate with themselves, they also mated with other dominant species, all to create each and every one of us. Even more astonishing is the fact that the scientists claimed that they had also seen traces of another species in human DNA, a species which so far has yet to be identified ever before. To answer the question, Dr. John Hawkes, an anthropologist from the University of Wisconsin, conducted an analysis of human DNA that traced back several thousands of years. Thanks to genome mapping, Dr. Hawkes discovered that the rate of DNA change within the past 5,000 years has been 100 times more than any 5,000-year period in human history. DNA changes are normal, but what on earth happened within the past 5,000 years that made the human DNA move into overdrive? Proponents of this theory believe that the human species didn't just mate with other life forms on Earth, but also with extraterrestrial beings from beyond our world. Oh yeah, hi aliens, we've been waiting for you. To be fair, there have been different theories and understandings of history that show that humans haven't only mated with each other. For instance, Christians believe that humans mated with angels who had fallen from heaven. Interestingly, this mating between humans and angels led to, what do you know, giants. Look, I know what you're about to say, here they go again with the alien stuff, but it seems like there really is a significant amount of evidence that shows that alien life either came to the Earth or had something to do with the way we became who we all are today. What are the chances that all of these guys are wrong? So what do these all tell us? The message is pretty clear here. Nothing can be fully explained. We live in a world where a lot of things are incredibly vague, and even the smartest of us have been unable to fully map out just how on earth we got here. From the discovery of the tomb in Iraq to the start of the human race, there are many questions that still need answers, and we've so far been unable to find any. And as the world continues to unfold, I'm pretty sure there will be even more questions left unanswered. From all of this, I definitely have several questions of my own. First of all, who the hell was the big dude that Fassbinder and his guys found in the tombs? Second, were Gilgamesh and Nimrod the same person? Third, did humans really go nasty with a bunch of aliens? And I know you have a lot of questions that you just want to be answered once and for all. You can ask them in the comments and raise discussions, or just let us know what you think. I think that's enough mind-blowing stuff for one day, guys.